Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to rewind some basketball games in the SEC from Tuesday, January 11th. Let's start in order. Georgia hosted Mississippi State and came away a 58-50 winner in a rock fight special. And if you're Mississippi State, you're going, my goodness, if we could just hit a few foul shots, we get a road win. That was the box score of this one, Blake. Let me just read you some numbers. Georgia shoots 28.6% and wins. Mississippi State is 7 of 22 from the foul line. Like, you got things on both sides of this box score here that if you're a fan of each of these teams, you're going, no way we won the game. Somebody had to win the game. And, of course, that was Georgia. Hats off to Mike White, who I think is doing a terrific job in his first year in Athens.
Yep, I said as much on Twitter last night, and, of course, there were some angry Florida fans who came in and gave me all kinds of reasons why he wasn't, but, that's a small portion, I assume, of the fan base, but there were also some very kind words from the Florida fans that, also had to mention that Georgia had lost to Florida in the middle of these back-to-back home wins against Auburn and Mississippi State, but my point was Georgia's 12-4. They were 6-26 last season. Georgia's won both of their SEC home games, which if you're going to be respectable in the SEC, if you're going to be at least average, you have to win your home games, and they've done that thus far against two teams that have been ranked in the top 25 at one point or another this season. And so, yes, Mike White's doing a good job. If we want to, keep going back to the Florida stuff, that's fine. But he's now the head coach at Georgia, and again, that's a very small percentage of people. But I said before, I thought it was a good hire for both parties to kind of take the pressure off of him there at Florida, to get Georgia back to at least being in the conversation in SEC basketball and not completely at the bottom. And thus far, it's panning out that way. As for this game, no surprise that Mississippi State missed free throws because what do you know? When we talked about the game heading into it, we said it's one of the worst free throw shooting teams
coming in. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the worst free throw shooting teams in the country. We can point out they could have won that game last night by making free throws. We could also point out that they could have beat Alabama by making free throws. They went 18-36 in that game. We talked about, you beat Ole Miss by, 10? Could have beat Ole Miss by 20 if they make free throws. They missed 13 in that game. So, and look, it's, we're talking about this as a team because we're not just going to single out one guy. But if you're going to do that, I mean, we understand. And Toulouse Smith's not able to make free throws consistently over these past, when he's had some of these games, right? You go back to the Alabama game, 3 of 15 and 3 of 11. I mean, look, at some point, I think it just becomes a mental thing. Well, and I think for him though, it's more once you get up there and you start missing a couple and you kind of remember back on again a performance like that, it's just I think there is a part of it that becomes, the mental aspect, and that's nothing new. It's been talked about many times before, and in basketball, just kind of I don't know, you can kind of psych yourself out a little bit. And I mean, I think the thing worth noting is, Mississippi State's now they've lost 4 games. I mean, what's the common denominator in all 4 of those games? Not just the free throw shooting, but it's if he scores under 10 points, they really are not going to have a chance to win. And he did that in all 4 of the games they've lost. So I think that's it. I mean, they've got to have him scoring because if not, there's not enough help elsewhere. But you look at it from Georgia's standpoint, another good game. I think just getting another good game in terms of getting other guys involved. And, Terry Roberts had 16 to lead the way. That's not surprising. But you're still getting other guys involved. And as we said, that was going to be very important. Low scoring game, just as we expected. And Georgia gets another, nice home win.
And Cario Quindo has no points in that one. So if you're Georgia, you're going, hey, we had a little something lacking there too.
Well, that's what I said. I mean, defensively, Mississippi State would do some things to make it challenging, and they did. And they play. I mean, Mississippi State played the game they needed to play to win. They just didn't hit shots, and that's going to be a common theme with some other teams we talk about in this slate of games. I mean, it's just winning on the road, not easy. And Mississippi State was not the only team to kind of learn that, based on just not having enough offensively. And again, that's been kind of the common theme, even as good as they are defensively at times.
Okay, game of the night. Alabama goes to Arkansas in a pick'em game. Literally was a pick'em game. And wins 84-69. Arkansas loses its first home game in a year. And the difference was kind of what we thought it would be, was that Alabama just had guys who could put it in the hole more than Arkansas did. Arkansas 2 of 10 from three-point range. Mark Sears was tremendous for Alabama. The Tide, as we suspected, just had an offensive gear that Arkansas didn't have.
Well, I mean, I know everybody was upset with the first half of that game, and it was basically,
It was tied at half.
well,
I think,
in
wasn't it?
terms of in terms of how the game was played. I mean, there were 28
Okay.
28 fouls or free I don't remember what it was in the first half combined. Kind of a free throw shooting contest early. But as I said to someone on Twitter, I mean, what else do you expect in big SEC games? They turn into free throw shooting contests a lot, and I just like it or not, that's unfortunately how some games I think are called in the SEC. When you get two teams like this that are very gritty and aggressive, and it's kind of how you saw it play out in the first half. And I know a lot of people were not happy about that, but to me, I think I've kind of become numb to it at this point.
Yeah.
I get tired of doing the statistical trends that I've done for the past 5 years, looking at how the SEC leads the country in free throws and fouls, and I mean it is what it is. But the bigger point is that Alabama, yes, was the better team in this game, and I think I mean, Brandon Miller didn't score in the first half, and did he have a shot attempt? I don't remember, but scores 14 in the second half, and Noah Clowney does his thing. But we said, I mean, Mark Sears is really starting to, and it's been that way for a while now. But
You got
I
to
mean,
the
he
rack a
just
lot last night.
well, and I mean, look, he just gives them a lot of things, right? Like even on the defensive side of the floor, he can do some things that really help his team and can get them. And I think we saw last night, as we've said, the difference with Alabama and so many other teams, maybe even the majority of the teams nationally, most of the teams nationally is probably a better way to put it. They can just go on these quick runs to just completely change a game in literally a span of a minute and a half or 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And they had another one of those, I think, last night. I can't remember the exact scenario, but all of a sudden Arkansas is right there, and you look up and Bama's up double digits. And that's just what they're able to do that not a lot of other teams are able to do. And it's because, they have guys like Brandon Miller and Mark Sears and all these other guys that are there, and just continue to kind of showcase their depth and just how they can play so many different guys and get solid to great production, out of all of them. And I think that just continues to be the case there. I look at it from Arkansas standpoint, and I mean, if you're Arkansas, it really was like I don't know that Arkansas did things that were that bad, right outside of maybe some questionable shots here or there. But it wasn't that many. And what have we said? I mean, for Arkansas, we kept talking about it. You don't know what the magic number is, but they're just not a good shooting team, and their their key to success was going to be trying to get to the free throw line and really just attacking, and they did that. I thought for the most part, again, outside of maybe a couple of jump shots here or there that probably weren't the best, but they only took 10 threes. I mean, that's a season
Yeah.
low, or I think it tied a season low, the first game of the season. Um, so I mean, that again is what we talk about when we say when you take an entire element out offensively, which for Arkansas, it's kind of a combination of Nick Smith and the 3-point shooting. It just makes it so much harder, especially when you play a team like Bama who can score, at will. And that's just kind of what you got here. It's just Alabama has that ability to make the kind of runs that Arkansas can't make right now as, they are constructed. And they just have that, Alabama has what a lot. It's not just Arkansas. It's so many other teams that cannot do some of the things Bama can. And I know there's going to be talk about the free throws. What I mean, Bama shot 36, Arkansas shot 23. I know, I understand where this conversation goes sometimes, but overall, I mean, we can talk. You can talk about poor officiating on both sides if you want, but I still think this was the kind of game that played out very similar as to what you probably would have expected, just based on Alabama, quite frankly, being Alabama at this point. And no matter where they play, as we said, it was a team that, you can say it's hard to win on the road, but Alabama's already proven away from home. I mean, it can beat the number one team in the country in Houston. It can beat some of these other teams that it's beaten away from home. And so it's a challenge. It was a challenging scenario, but it wasn't as challenging for this team because they've already kind of been in some of these spots before. And yeah, they stepped up, made the big plays down the stretch, and got a big win here.
Jalen Graham played a lot more for Arkansas last night. I think there's been some games where he even had some DNPs or close to it. He played a lot at Arizona State last year. That was, I think, one of the first guys he added in the portal, along with the Mitchell twins. You saw less of Jordan Walsh last night. Only had 2 fouls. I was a little bit hit and miss on this game last night with some family responsibilities. And Muss has done this before, where you see a guy get a little bit more playing time for a bit, and then maybe it goes away, or sometimes it sticks. But I thought Jalen Graham really helped them out last night. I thought his minutes were very productive, and I'm kind of curious as to where that goes from here.
Well, what do you do when you have limited options at this point?
Right.
You play the hot hand, and it will change game by game, I think. But like that was probably in this context against a top tier opponent. That was the first time this season, you've been able to have Jalen Graham on the floor and really, give them a spark offensively in a big game like this. And, because like you said, I mean, Auburn game, 12 minutes played. Missouri plays 2 minutes. LSU plays 3 minutes. That's what we talked about this probably a couple weeks ago. That's what Muss has to do now. Like the rotation has to expand, and he's going to have to get to where it's just you're playing the hot hand, right? I mean, it's the same thing they did with Pinion against Missouri.
Yep.
That's what they're going to have to do. And they, again, it didn't pay off in this game in terms of getting a win, but this is how they're going to have to win. Is they're just going to have. I mean, unfortunately, like right now, do you fully expect this to be an every game thing with some of these guys where all of a sudden everybody's just going to, start being consistent? But it's probably not. So you're going to have to take what you can get when again, if you've got a hot hand like Jalen, and maybe this is a springboard, right? Like you never know. I mean, maybe this is what he needed. And, now you can confidently start playing him a lot more and feel like he can give you, productive minutes. I hope so, because that's, again, I think that would be beneficial for everyone. That's just what this team needs. That they need a spark, and it puts a lot on Ricky Council, and Anthony Black it's been a little up and down. I mean, in terms, like I said, he didn't shoot the ball well last night, and so I think that's where it's gotten to with Arkansas is, and I think again, Arkansas fans are probably looking at this and understanding that it's just there is much less. I mean, think about what we're talking about with this team a month and a half ago to where they are now. That room for error is so much smaller, just based on their limitations, I think, offensively. And it's just, yeah, they're going to have to figure that out because, I mean, look, as we talked about it, right? This is maybe that stretch where you look back at last year and so forth, and they go to Vanderbilt on Saturday. Fully expect Vanderbilt to keep the game close, which we'll talk about in our previews. They go to Missouri next Wednesday. I mean, that game was close, last week. So, I mean, they're 1-3 in the SEC right now. There's plenty of time to make up that ground, and the schedule will get easier after that because then they have 3 straight SEC home games against Ole Miss, LSU, and A&M. But right now, they're finding themselves in one of those stretches again where they're really being tested. And you know what? Maybe we get to March and it completely pays off. But right now, that they're kind of just they're trying to figure some things out, and I think that goes from us and the staff and the players, and everybody's just trying to get it all on the same page. But as we saw, there's just a good game for the most part, but there's still a gap, I think, between Alabama and teams like Arkansas, who really seems like are back to that point of really trying to kind of find their way. So,
all right, you're going to give me an eye roll for bringing this up, but I have to, I think, as a matter of housekeeping. Nick Smith, because this keeps coming up in the comments, and Arkansas fans have been nice about it. I'm not saying they haven't, but there's been some of this, well, Nick Smith could come back in February thing. Here's the issue, and I think this was the Athletic that had reported on this when I read it yesterday. The issue, I think he's a Clutch Sports guy, right?
I couldn't tell you, Chris. I don't know who these guys represent.
Here's where I'm going. Clutch Sports, I think, has done this. I think it did it with Darius Garland a few years ago. And maybe the big thing that tells you who the player in this is, it was reported he's been working out in LA to rehab rather than in Fayetteville. Now I know they're on break.
Yeah, must announce that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but I'm just getting that out there for people. Of why there's maybe this disconnect between, well, he can come back, and people saying, well, maybe he's done for the year. Is when you start getting involvement like that from the outside, usually their involvement with the client is advising, hey, long-term, this is what you need to do. And I think that's why this keeps popping up and you've got a discrepancy of opinion.
Well, I mean, we had this conversation from the start. I mean, we said this is not unprecedented. I mean, this is something that actually happens a lot. You'd be more surprised than not if they don't shut him down, if it's a lingering thing. So
yeah,
I think we arrived at that conclusion a month ago. And, I think.
But you still have some fans who aren't following, and that's why I'm bringing it up.
Right. No. I'm saying it is Clutch Sports, by the way. Yeah, you're right. But I mean, here's what we know. Muss has announced that at least through January. So throughout January, it's a conversation that there's no reason to have it beyond just the mention that you talked about, because we know he's not playing in January. Like, we know that 100% certain. And yes, like, once we get to February, you can reevaluate. But it's one of those things where I think, as I said too, if I'm but I'm not an Arkansas. I'm not just someone just pulling for one fan base and trying to get everything I can out of this season, like Arkansas fans are, and what the expectations were with him coming into the season. But if I'm him, and I'm the people around him, and this is again a lingering issue, there's no hesitation as to what he'll do. And that's, like I said, we don't have to like it. I mean, but that's unfortunately, just the nature of where things are now. And and once again, I mean, I get it, the pride and the wearing the jersey and all that, but I think everyone knows it's a lot more complicated than that these days. And so we'll see. But again, that's a conversation for February 1, because right now we know he's not playing through January. So
betting $11 to win 10 stinks. With BROTHROW, you bet 10 to win 10. It lets you bet on all 50 states. Because BROTHROW isn't the house, bettors have a fair chance at winning. It is the only sports betting platform that doesn't take a cut of every bet. No deposit minimums, no deposits at all, no minimum bets, no need to connect your bank account. Bettors pay each other directly. There's a hassle-free sign-up process that gets you in the action in seconds. Go to brothrow.com/SE14 and win some money, hopefully. Help out the folks who help us. A lot of fun. And once you're there, ask to join our private group. We'll let you in, and we'll get some fun started there. Okay, we have talked repeatedly about how Texas A&M under Buzz Williams has played one way in the out-of-conference and another way in conference play. The Aggies now 3-0 after beating Missouri in a game that, as best I could tell by box score watching from afar, again, I had some family stuff to take care of last night and was not able to watch. But A&M unbeaten at 3-0 and a half game behind Alabama and A&M after a pretty impressive win over Missouri.
Yep. Well, guess who's stunned? Raise your hand if you're stunned by this. No one's raising their hands here, because it's like we said,
this one.
Well, I mean, I don't thought it'd be a little bit closer, but I think, as we mentioned, there's a really good shot. We're going to be looking up at a 5-0 A&M team, come next Saturday. And you know what? Here's how I envision it, Chris. And some A&M fans may not be happy about this joke, but I envision A&M going 11-7.
I think we're thinking the same.
I envision A&M going
you're going where
11-7
I'm
in the
going.
SEC, getting to the SEC tournament, needing to win a game or two, being the final team left out of the NCAA tournament, and then we have the same discussion we had last season. That's where
And
I
look,
think this is headed.
A&M deserved to be in the tournament last year. I am 100% sure of that. But it left the door wide open for the same thing to happen this year. By the way, A&M moved up from 83 to 74 in the net last night, for what that's worth.
Yeah. So it's going to drop in the net after Saturday, no matter what happens. But because it's playing South Carolina, as we know, the net will penalize you for playing bad teams. Or excuse me, sorry, South Carolina officially, a lower ranked net team. I don't want to call South Carolina a bad team since they just went at Kentucky. So, yeah, I mean, look, it was. I thought this was a game. Defensively, you knew there was going to be some things that A&M could do, but boy, what did you get offensively from A&M here? They hit threes. They were very efficient. They got to the free throw line. If they're doing that, like they are, they're going to be one of the best teams in the SEC. Because
6 guys in
now,
double figures.
yeah, and I mean, balance and getting. I mean, because it's the thing, right? Like this team, you felt like one of the things we questioned was just their shooting. Like, where was their 3-point shooting going to come? And they're still shooting about 32%. And don't ever forget something too about discussing the 3-pointer. We got to do that quickly. But someone asked a question in the comments that I want to bring up before we forget. But this is a team that's not not shot the three well. 2 of 16 against Florida, 4 of 16 against LSU, but they make 10 last night. And I thought it was honestly a situation. Sometimes you just get those games where one team hits their shots, the other team does not. I thought that was kind of it here. A&M just hit their shots, that they just made their shot. I thought Missouri actually was not terrible defensively. Now they gave up some baskets, but I also think A&M just hit some that A&M just hit. And again, we've said, I mean, Missouri still going to have some of those times where they give up points. This was one here. But A&M turned it over 18 times, and Missouri just couldn't hit anything. Let's call it what it is. They shot 23% from three. They only 7 of 31. Just couldn't hit shots. I mean, Hodge couldn't hit shots, and so it just kind of was one of those games for the Tigers that you're going to have on the road. And so I don't know that my opinion on Missouri changes all that much, because we did expect this to be one that probably leaned in A&M's favor. Now, the bigger thing becomes Missouri's game on Saturday, as we said, because they go to Florida, and I think that's an interesting one now, and maybe a crucial one, because after that is when you start to see then you got 3 straight home games in terms of just your home matchups. You got Arkansas, Alabama, and Iowa State. So even your home games
with Ole Miss in between,
right? But my point is the home games, the ones that you have to kind of win, those are very challenging, right? So those are not gimmies. So you need to be able to win those home games, but these are all going to be tough. So yeah, so I think it's very important that they kind of bounce back and have a good game at Florida, which, as we said, it's not going to be easy either, the way Florida's kind of starting to play. So I don't know. I don't think it's a bad loss, but I think it's a loss that can, it's not ideal based on the upcoming schedule. But for A&M, here they are. They're back. They've won 5 in a row, 3-0 in the SEC, and now let's see what happens at South Carolina on Saturday.
Parting thoughts.
All right. So someone brought up the 3-point shooting. They asked the question about, we keep saying the SEC is a bad 3-point shooting league in the comments. And is it just, why do we keep saying that? And I think it was more the question of, well, if you compare conference versus non-conference, it's just the SEC is a great defensive league. So is that why it's just a bad shooting league? My response to that was, you still only have 5 guys who are shooting 33% or better on the year who have actually attempted enough threes to call them shooters, right, Chris? I mean, that's kind of the SEC stats, and there's a minimum there involved. But, I mean, to me, that still means it's not a great shooting league if you only have 5 guys who are shooting 33% or better. So we could play that game about, sure, the defense in the SEC playing tougher teams that defend better is going to bring your 3-point numbers down. But at the same time, does it mean you're a great shooting team if you hit 10 threes against, a team that's 2-8, 2-18? You know what I mean? Like, if you beat a bad non-conference team and make 10 threes, does that mean you're a great shooting team just because you made 10 threes? I don't know. And so I think it's the overall trend suggests that this is not a good shooting league. And it's not just this season. It's been that way for a while now. The numbers don't lie. And yes, you can kind of split them. And if I had the time, I would probably do more research on the conference versus non-conference splits in terms of shooting percentages. But to be honest with you, I don't think it's that much different. Just based on the numbers are what they are. So,
well, the SEC is, according to Ken Palm, 31 of the 33 leagues in 3-point percentage. That includes independents.
Yeah, we brought that up yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and just for an independent, these are teams that are just usually getting into Division I and are not very good. But here's a good test. What does the SEC rank on unguarded shots, Blake? That would be foul shots. Nobody's guarding you at the foul line. The SEC is 24th,
right,
of the conferences. So
once again, it was an interesting question because I do think it would be an interesting stat to look at. But overall, I just think if you dive into the numbers, I think it's pretty clear that this is just not a. It's not a league that's built to be a great 3-point shooting league.
Yeah,
it's just the rosters are not constructed to be elite 3-point shooting outside of a couple teams here or there. They may have nice percentages, but in all honesty, it's some of those are because they're not shooting a lot of threes, right? I mean, and so I just think overall it still is what it is. I mean, right now in conference play, yeah, I mean you've got 3 teams shooting above 33% thus far: Tennessee, Bama, and Georgia. So,
yeah. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. Those both help us out. That also gets you notified when we do stuff. Should have a live stream tonight if you want to get in and ask us questions directly.
Maybe.
Maybe. We're check your notifications.
Have one last night, so let's just know that these are always in flux. So don't.
We're two guys with families and kids and even dogs. And so yeah, we have good intentions. Sometimes life gets in the way. We do try to. There's 7-day work weeks around here, and you got to build in a little time for the family at some point. But anyway, keep watching. We're going to preview every game for this weekend. Again, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We're Southeastern 14. We'll see you soon.